During a family gathering, my girlfriend's cousin inquired about our wedding plans. She let out a laugh and remarked, "When my better choices are exhausted." The group shared a light laugh. I simply stood there and joined in the laughter. 2 weeks on, she discovered that choices can disappear quickly. Family gatherings can be a unique form of torment. You pass an entire day engaging in superficial conversation with relatives you hardly recognize, consuming dubious potato salad, and acting as if you're genuinely delighted to attend. For me, the one last Saturday at my girlfriend's family event wasn't merely torment. It was where my relationship came to an end, and I was the one who ended it. Allow me to paint the picture. I'm Mark, 38 years old. I run a logistics business. My girlfriend Sarah, 31, embodies the complete opposite. Her existence revolves around impulsive emotions, status-seeking, and an unending, frantic craving for approval. For 3 years, I believed her unpredictability added thrill. Now I recognize it for what it truly is, a massive, waving warning sign. The issue extended beyond just her character. It involved her relatives. They come from inherited wealth, and they've never allowed me to forget that I don't belong. I'm someone who launched his business with one van and substantial loans. They're individuals who've never put in a genuine day's labor in their lives. To them, I represented an amusement. The blue-collar type their darling Sarah was temporarily dabbling with. The lack of respect was generally understated. A patronizing remark about my pickup. A veiled praise on how well-spoken I seemed for someone without an elite college education. I attempted to brush it aside, convincing myself their opinions from these spoiled elitists were irrelevant. But it acted as a gradual toxin, and Sarah was the one permitting them to deliver it. The instant I realized I needed to plan for the conclusion came roughly 6 months earlier. We attended a fundraising event her parents had insisted we join. I was discussing with one of her father's professional contacts, a reasonable man, the difficulties in supply chain operations. Her father approached, draped his arm over my shoulder, and declared with a hearty guffaw, "Don't let Mark mislead you with his fancy terms. He's essentially an upscale package handler." The contact chuckled awkwardly. I simply stared at my partially consumed appetizer. That same evening, I noticed Sarah giggling with her father as he recounted the anecdote to another cluster. That sealed it. That was the evening I created a new directory on my laptop titled Departure Plan, which leads to the gathering. It took place at her aunt's enormous lakeside estate. Numerous attendees I didn't recognize, all sharing the family name and the identical self-satisfied expression. I was making an effort to remain gracious, but following 3 hours of discussions on yacht upkeep and investment markets, I was close to simulating a medical emergency to escape. Sarah had deserted me shortly after arrival, leaving me to navigate alone while she drifted among her cousins' circles, absorbing their admiration. I was positioned near the grill, feigning interest in a discussion about golf with her uncle, when I observed her cousin, a boisterous, unpleasant young woman named Brittany, trap Sarah in conversation. Brittany had always harbored resentment toward me. I suspect she viewed me as a danger to their exclusive privileged circle. I couldn't catch the full exchange, but the key portion reached me. Brittany, projecting her voice so the entire deck could hear, questioned, "So, Sarah, when will Mark finally commit to you properly? When are you two tying the knot?" Sarah laughed. It was a sharp, melodic tone, the kind she employs when aiming to appear charming yet aloof. She scanned the ring of relatives tuned in, then locked eyes with me and grinned. "Oh, Brittany, stop teasing," she replied, her tone laced with superiority. "We'll tie the knot when my genuine prospects are depleted." The entire circle laughed lightly. Her aunts, her cousins, even her father grinned. It was meant as humor, naturally. A witty dig at the man who fell short, the temporary stand-in until a superior match appeared. And right then, an inner switch flipped to silence. It wasn't fury, nor pain. It was the crisp, definitive snap of a permanent choice locking in. I had been naive. I had tolerated their arrogance, their slights, their thinly disguised disdain, all for a woman who regarded me as her fallback plan. I remained silent. I simply gazed at her beaming expression, at her relatives chuckling at my cost. I paused briefly, meeting each one's gaze. Then I pivoted and departed. I didn't dash. I didn't dramatically exit. I simply proceeded, at a steady, intentional stride, across the event, through the entrance, and to my vehicle. I entered, ignited the engine, and departed. I never glanced rearward. I was finished. Update 1: The journey home spanned 2 hours of absolute, unbroken quiet. I avoided the radio. I placed no calls. I merely drove, and with each passing mile, I sensed a burden easing from my chest that I hadn't fully acknowledged. The burden of striving to measure up for individuals who had predetermined I never would. I arrived at my residence. My residence, into which she had relocated a year prior, yet remained entirely mine legally and financially, around 8 in the evening. The initial action was entering my study and accessing the departure plan folder. I had previously spoken with an attorney. I had established independent financial accounts. I had been readying for this moment, wishing it would never arrive, but sensing instinctively that it was unavoidable. My phone began exploding roughly an hour after returning. Messages and calls from her mother, her cousins. A barrage of inquiries and missed notifications. Where did you go? What's the matter? You simply departed? That was incredibly impolite. I disregarded everyone. I simply commenced implementing the strategy. First, the entry systems. I had installed an advanced security setup several months earlier. I claimed it was for protection. Truthfully, it allowed me to update all codes and disable her access device via app in moments, which I executed. The property was secured. Next, her possessions. I refused to merely box them neatly. That seemed too straightforward, too tidy. I intended to convey a message that I would no longer serve as her backup. Her contingency. I searched online for a nearby organization supporting shelters for women, handling pickups of furnishings and apparel. I contacted them. I informed the representative of a substantial premium donation, an entire household's worth of female attire, furnishings, and belongings. I highlighted certain luxury labels Sarah possessed. The representative was nearly overwhelmed. They typically received worn, outdated items. This represented a boon. They confirmed a vehicle could arrive at 9 the following morning. Ideal. The sole exceptions were her vital papers, her passport, birth records, and select irreplaceable childhood mementos. I placed those in a compact container. All else was included. The mattress she used, the workstation she occupied, the wardrobe she filled. Everything. Around midnight, I composed one message to her father. He had laughed the hardest at her remark. The message stated, "Sir, I am notifying you that my partnership with your daughter has concluded." Her statement at the gathering today clarified her stance on our prospects unequivocally. Accordingly, I have arranged for all her items in my residence to be contributed to a nearby charitable cause. Collection is scheduled for morning. I have, however, reserved a container of her essential documents and treasured keepsakes. Your daughter may coordinate retrieval of this container from my workplace tomorrow afternoon. Kindly refrain from further contact. I sent it, then blocked his contact, and every other family members I possessed. I powered down my device, poured a generous whiskey, and relaxed on my rear patio, savoring the peace of my solitary home for the first occasion in ages. Update 2: The following day, the donation vehicle arrived precisely at 9. It required over an hour for the 3 workers to clear everything. The wardrobes, drawers, the spare room she had claimed as her workspace. All removed. The home appeared vacant, yet refreshingly so, as if thoroughly purified. The intense reaction I anticipated began near noon. My phone, reactivated at last, was inundated with furious voicemails and messages from unfamiliar contacts. Her circle of friends, evidently. I erased them unread. They preceded the showdown I expected. Around 2, my entry camera alerted. It was Sarah, and she was furious, accompanied by cousin Brittany, the original provocateur. I opened the door, but kept the safety latch engaged. "Mark, what on earth is happening?" Sarah yelled. "My father claims you gave away everything I own. Is this some prank?" "No prank," I replied steadily. "I assumed since you're seeking fresh prospects, you'd appreciate a clean slate. I merely assisted the transition." Brittany advanced, her expression pure indignation. "You are despicable. She cared for you. She planned to wed you." "No," I clarified. "She intended to wed me once her superior prospects vanished. I simply withdrew myself from contending for the consolation prize. It's a dignified choice, known as conceding defeat." Sarah began weeping then. Dramatic, performative sobs. "But my wardrobe, my furnishings, those were costly items. My grandmother's heirloom dressing table." "Precisely," I noted. And I'm certain a woman with nothing will cherish your grandmother's dressing table immensely. View it as an act of kindness, a means to purify your conscience. I'm contacting authorities, she wailed. You took my belongings. Feel free, I responded. And I will present the message from your father confirming I offered retrieval of essential documents. I can also supply a record of the many relatives who overheard your open announcement that our partnership was laughable and I was merely your backup. That's termed proving intent, Sarah. I doubt you'd pursue that path. She recognized defeat. Her sobs shifted to fury. You'll pay for this, Mark. My father will destroy you. Your father holds no power over me, I stated. I constructed my enterprise from nothing using my own effort. I lack a safety fund. I possess something superior, dignity. You might consider acquiring some. I shut the door and secured it. The final sound was her shouting my name. It echoed as a prospect that had formally expired. Final update. 6 months have passed. The threatened litigation from her father, as anticipated, never occurred. He's intimidating, but not foolish. He understood a court battle would expose their household's scandals publicly. The defamation attempt they orchestrated, however, unfolded differently. It was a joint campaign spearheaded by Brittany and Sarah's additional cousins. The storyline portrayed me as an unstable, fragile individual unable to handle humor. They claimed I suffered a meltdown, maliciously contributed Sarah's possessions in vengeance, and she was fortunate to escape. Initially, I disregarded it. Their views meant nothing. But then it impacted my enterprise. One uncle of Sarah's, highly connected locally, began circulating falsehoods. I forfeited several prospective contracts due to it. That's when I decided to respond. Not openly. In my style, through precision. I engaged a skilled private detective. I assigned him one focus, Brittany. I suspected the most vocal critic concealed the deepest flaws. It required a week, and the discoveries were invaluable. Brittany, the flawless debutante, was involved romantically with a wedded individual. A highly influential, affluent, and firmly married individual who was a chief competitor to her father's enterprise. She was additionally charging corporate expenses from her nominal role at her father's firm for their accommodations and lavish meals. I compiled everything into a concise dossier. The billing records, message exchanges, photographs. Then mailed it anonymously in a standard envelope to Brittany's father. No accompanying message. None required. The defamation halted immediately. The whispers about me ceased. Brittany's online presence vanished. Mutual contacts informed me her father had fully disowned her, and the paramour's spouse initiated a chaotic, publicized separation. Sarah's circumstances, based on reports, have involved repeated setbacks. Lacking my support for expenses and housing, she returned to her parents' home. The humiliation of that, for someone fixated on image, must have been devastating. She secured actual employment, and reportedly struggles significantly. Society, it appears, isn't as enamored with her as she believes. Her relatives, those who smirked at her harsh quip, have encountered subtle repercussions. The account of the gathering incident, combined with Brittany's exposure, has evidently isolated them in their social sphere. It's challenging to uphold an aura of refinement and grace when others recognize you're a group of treacherous, haughty intimidators. I encountered her once, several weeks back. I was dining at one of my establishments with my current partner. A woman who stands as my equal, not my obligation. Sarah entered with companions. She noticed me. Our gazes connected. Her expression blended astonishment, resentment, and perhaps remorse. She and her group promptly exited. The true retribution wasn't the contributed items or barred entry. It was compelling them to inhabit the reality they had built, a reality excluding me entirely. She perceived our bond as a fallback, a reserve for when superior paths failed. I simply eliminated the fallback. I allowed the descent. And reports suggest she's continuing to descend. She preferred delaying until prospects depleted. I merely accelerated it. In doing so, I unlocked a realm of superior prospects for myself. And I have never regretted it.